Hello. I'm on a mission because it is 1/1/2026. Happy 2026, guys. Happy New Year's. Um I'm on a mission to get this APUSH thing done as quickly as possible. Not It's not going to be that quick, but I'm going to finish 2 lessons every single day because I procrastinated. So, we're going to do 18.2 because I just did 18.1, okay? Are we ready? It's like the same crap, but just different. A little different. So 18.2, invention to industrial growth. It's like literally the same thing. So Neil Star, new steel refining processes, along with inventions in communications and electricity, transformed the 19th century American business landscape. We know this because we just talked about this in 18.1. These technologies created opportunities for massive economic growth, allowing entrepreneurs with sufficient. Okay, I'm going to try to go fast as I can over the stuff that we've already gone through. Allowing entrepreneurs with allowing, that doesn't make sense. Supplying entrepreneurs with sufficient financial backing, business skill, and ambition to accumulate enormous wealth. Some of these wealthy businessmen became known as robber barons. What the heck is that? It's like Robin Hood. A negative label. This is a negative label if you couldn't tell by the fact that they're called robbers. Reflecting the belief that they exploited workers, which is probably true and actually is true, and manipulated laws to succeed. And regardless of public opinion, these men and their companies revolutionized American industry. So let's talk about railroads and robber barons. Don't know. They both start with an R. So early in the 19th century, the construction of the first transcontinental road and its spur lines triggered rapid and explosive railroad expansion. And do you want to know what spur lines are? Because I don't know what they are. So spur lines are essentially a very short branch line, which a branch line is a mass transportation system. So that's all you really need to know. It's a secondary railway line that branches off a more important route. Usually there's a main line. Do you get this? There's a main line, then there's a branch line, and then a spur line is just a very short branch line. So a branch line is like, and then a spur line may be like, yeah, okay, that's easy enough. And, sorry. Okay, need to look back at my notes. Where did they go? Because I have no idea. I don't know crap about this lesson. Okay. So this growth stimulated related industries including iron, wool, coal. Did we all learn about this in Minecraft? Yes. And as a result, the railroad industry became the nation's first true big business. Railroads provided a powerful, inexpensive, and reliable transportation system, and it really sped up the development of nearly every single other industry because it just transports everything. And by 1890, railroad lines reached nearly every corner of the United States, transporting raw materials to factories and finished goods to markets. Like it's literally like Amazon. So track mileage expanded dramatically, growing from 35,000 miles at the end of the Civil War to over 200,000 miles by 1900. 19 then Not the 1900s, by 1900. 90,000 miles to at the end of the Civil War to over 200,000 over. And technological innovations such as car couplers, air brakers. I'm not going to remember this. Car couplers, air brakes, and Pullman passenger cars. I don't know what these are, but I don't think it matters. These allowed railroads to safely and efficiently transport greater volumes of freight and passengers. And between 1877 and 1890, the amount of goods shipped and the number of passengers traveling by rail both tripled times 3. Bada bing, bada boom. Okay? Railroad growth was funded through a mix of private investment and government support. Federal and state governments provided $150 million in loans and 185 million acres of public land grants. So this is federal and state. Railroads also sold stocks and bonds on the New York Stock Exchange, attracting investors from both the United States and Europe. And as railroads merged and expanded, individual investors consolidated power, becoming some of the wealthiest Americans in history. However, Midwestern farmers, angered by exploitative railroad practices, popularized the term robber barons. And one of the most controversial practices was differential shipping rates, where large corporations received discounted shipping costs while small farmers and local producers paid higher rates, effectively subsidizing big businesses. So it's not fair. Like, why would you make the small businesses pay more? It's like taxes nowadays. Jay Gould. Let's talk about Jay Gould. Jay Gould. He is a notorious robber baron. And Jay Gould became one of the earliest and most infamous figures labeled a robber baron. His business strategy involved purchasing older, smaller, and poorly maintained railroads, investing minimally in improvements, and profiting from factory owners' He was profiting from factory owners' need for cheaper transportation. His involvement with the Erie Railroad was particularly famous. He drove the company near ruin during a failed attempt to attract foreign investors as a part of a takeover effort. This strategy failed in the East. Although the strategy failed in the East, it proved way more effective in the American West, where limited railroad options forced farmers and businesses to pay whatever prices he wanted. It didn't matter. And Gould controlled the Union Pacific Railroad, so the UPR. And you can guess what the R is. Which helped construct the original Transcontinental Railroad, and eventually he owned over 10,000 miles of tracks, accounting for 15% of all railroad transportation in the United States. And when he died in 1892, we all clapped. I'm kidding. When he died in 1892, his personal fortune exceeded $100 million. Although he remained a deeply unpopular figure, which we don't blame anyone for that. And in contrast to Jay Gould's exploitative profit-first business model, let's talk about Commodore, I don't know how to say this, Cornelius Vanderbilt. He was a robber baron who genuinely did care about the success, efficiency, and economic value of his railroad enterprises. Vanderbilt focused on building a strong, productive railroad system that benefited both his company and the broader American economy. Vanderbilt consolidated several smaller railroad lines, known as trunk lines, to form the New York Central Railroad Company, which became one of the largest corporations in the United States at the time. So he later expanded his influence further by purchasing stock in major railroad lines connecting to Chicago, allowing him to extend his reach westward while simultaneously creating a continuous railroad network between Chicago and New York City. So he just bought a bunch of little tiny ass railroad. Oh, can't say that. Sorry. Tiny little railroad lines, trunk lines, whatever, and just got a bunch of big ones in Chicago as well, and connected all of them. Great. So this consolidation dramatically improved efficiency, allowing Midwestern suppliers to transport goods more easily to Eastern markets. And though consolidation efforts like Vanderbilt's 7 major railroad tycoons controlled more than 70% of all operating railroad lines by 1900. What? 7 major railroad tycoons controlled more than 70% of all operating railroad lines by 1900. Okay, let's write that down. Vanderbilt's immense success resulted in a personal fortune of over $100 million at the time of his death in 1877, placing him among the 3 wealthiest individuals in American history. So while post-Civil War inventors generated transformative ideas, they were not the industrial titans who build massive business empires. That role fell to the entrepreneurs whose financial risks and business strategies paid off on an unprecedented scale. Among the most influential were a magnate, whatever you want to. Andrew Carnegie, oil tycoon. So this guy's for steel, oil. John D. Rockefeller. And financier. Whatever you want to, I don't know. J.P. Morgan. These men expanded their companies to sizes never seen before in American history. Wow, crazy. Their enterprises reshaped how Americans lived and worked, and their influence significantly guided the nation's economic growth and industrial expansion. I don't know why I can't talk today. Okay, let's talk about Andrew Carnegie. Hi. Andrew Carnegie. He is the classic Cinderella story, rags to riches. It's very exaggerated in American culture, but this one is very, very true. Born in Scotland. He's born in Scotland. Carnegie immigrated with his family to Pennsylvania in 1848. And at age 13, he worked as a bobbin boy, changing spools of thread at Pittsburgh clothing manufacturer. He later became a telegram messenger boy, spending significant time around the Pennsylvania Railroad offices, where he developed interest in railroads, bridge construction, and steel production. Carnegie earned the trust of his supervisor, Tom Scott, who later became president of the Pennsylvania Railroad. And with Scott's guidance, Carnegie advanced into management positions and began investing his earnings. A critical investment came in 1864. When Carnegie invested in the oil fields of northwest Pennsylvania, earning over $1 million in cash dividends. This windfall provided the capital he needed to modernize the iron and steel industries. Carnegie's belief in steel's importance was reinforced during the Civil War when he served as superintendent of military railways and a telegraph coordinator for Union forces. Witnessing the central role of industry, especially steel in wartime logistics, sorry, it's so much word vomit, convinced him that steel would drive America's future growth. The first steel company was his first steel company was the J. Edgar Thompson Steel works. And about a decade later, he purchased the Homestead Steel Works from the Pittsburgh Bessemer Steel Company. By the end of the 19th century, Carnegie's steel empire was earning annual profits exceeding $40 million, solidifying his position as one of the most powerful industrialists in American history. Like, wow. Okay. Whew, sorry. You gotta breathe. Although Andrew Carnegie was not a scientific expert in steel production, he was a very good promoter, salesman, and businessman, and he was very skilled at securing financial backing for his enterprises, and kind of made like not so great decisions. Kind of messed up decisions about consolidation and expansion, which allowed him to capitalize on smart business opportunities. He was extremely thrifty. I don't know how else to describe this, which is a trait shaped by his very poor upbringing. During periods of economic prosperity, he saved profits, and during economic downturns, particularly the recessions of 1870s and 1890s, he used those savings to buy out competing steel companies at low prices. He insisted on using up-to-date machinery and equipment in his steel mills and continuously encouraged managers and workers to find innovative ways to increase production while reducing costs. More than any other businessman of the era, Carnegie promoted the idea that America's wealthiest industrialists owed a responsibility to society. Because he personally understood poverty, which is good, he believed successful tycoons should act as benefactors to the less fortunate. And Carnegie wanted to be an example, set an example of philanthropy for other industrialists to follow. So basically, like, he wanted to just, like, promote the welfare of others, which is good for him. Like, we love that, right? Mm. Okay, sorry. Okay. His beliefs were famously outlined in his essay, The Gospel of Wealth, where he argued that wealthy individuals had a moral obligation to use their fortunes to improve society. And in this essay, Carnegie drew upon Herbert Spencer's theory of social Darwinism, which claimed that society evolved similarly to plant and animal life, with the most fit and capable achieving the greatest material and social success. That is kind of crazy. No, that's not too bad, but social Darwinism is not that great. Social Darwinism added a layer of pseudoscientific justification to the idea of the self-made man, reinforcing the belief that success was earned through natural superiority. He's just built different, clearly, right? The idea was highly appealing to those hoping to replicate Carnegie's rise. Like, they're like, oh, we're poor too. Maybe if we're just built different, we can do the same thing and get $100 million. Not really how that works, but, you know, if you try, maybe. So the rags to riches myth became deeply embedded in American culture. How do you say this guy's name? Horatio. 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 Don't know. He's a popular author, okay? He spread this belief through stories like the rags to riches myth. He spread this belief through stories of young, enterprising boys who overcame poverty and achieved business success through a mix of luck and pluck. These stories were immensely popular and even inspired a board game, allowing the players to symbolically experience the same kind of upward mobility as Alger's fictional heroes. My throat is dry. Like Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller. Let's talk about that guy. John D. Rockefeller. He was born in 1839 into modest circumstances. His father was a frequently absent traveling salesman who sold medicinal elixirs and other goods. Rockefeller helped his mother with household chores and earned additional money by selling products from the family farm. In 1853, the family moved to a suburb of Cleveland, where Rockefeller took accounting and bookkeeping courses while in high school and developed a strong interest in business. In 1859, while living in Cleveland, he learned about Colonel Edwin Drake's oil strike. Near Titusville, what the heck? Pennsylvania, which launched a massive oil boom even larger than the earlier California gold rush. Many Americans rushed into wildcatting, which is the risky and chaotic practice of drilling exploratory oil wells in hopes of striking oil. Rockefeller, however, chose a more stable and reliable approach, refining crude oil into kerosene. Kerosene was used for heating and lighting and was more efficient and safer to produce than whale oil, which it rapidly replaced in homes and businesses. Rockefeller initially worked with family and friends in Cleveland-based refining operations, and by 1870, he consolidated his resources and founded the Standard Oil Company of Ohio. The Standard Oil Company of Ohio, which was initially valued at $1 million, marking the beginning of one of the most powerful corporations in American history. John D. Rockefeller was ruthless in his pursuit of total control over the oil refining industry. As other entrepreneurs flooded oil-producing regions hoping for quick fortunes, Rockefeller devised a deliberate strategy to eliminate competition and create a true monopoly in oil refining. Beginning in 1872, Rockefeller negotiated secret agreements with major railroad companies to secure discounted freight rates for shipping his kerosene. Crazy. These agreements also allowed him to use railroads to gather intelligence on his competitors, including shipment volumes and destinations. And because Standard Oil could transport kerosene at lower costs, Rockefeller sold his price at prices competitors could not match. And as a result, competitors were driven out of business, and Rockefeller frequently offered to buy failing rivals for pennies on the dollar. And if they refused, he relentlessly undercut them until they collapsed financially. This strategy relied on horizontal integration, which means growth through the merging or acquisition of similar companies in the same industry. And by absorbing nearly every refinery in the region, Standard Oil expanded rapidly. By 1879, the Standard Oil Company controlled nearly 95% of oil refining in the United States and 90% of oil refining worldwide. And public outrage grew. In 1880, editors of the New York the New York World, editors of the, I don't know what that is. The New York World condemned Standard Oil as the most gigantic, the most cruel, impudent, pitiless, and grasping monopoly ever tolerated by a nation. That's a bit much. Seeking even greater control, this guy never gets enough. Rockefeller pursued vertical integration, which is a business model in which a company manages every stage of production from raw materials to distribution. And to do this, Rockefeller invested in or acquired businesses involved in barrel manufacturing, pipelines, tanker cars, railroads, and transportation networks. This allowed him to dominate not only refining, but also distribution and logistics, enabling him to wage brutal price wars that drove remaining competitors out of the market. While many critics viewed Rockefeller as no better than a robber baron, some observers praised his efficiency. His integrated system helped reduce kerosene prices by as much as 80% by the end of the 19th century, making fuel more affordable for customers. Rockefeller's success inspired others to adopt similar strategies. For example, Gustavus Swift Gustavus, sorry, it's really bad handwriting. Gustavus Swift used vertical integration as well to dominate the U.S. meat packing industry in the late 19th century. To manage the vast array of businesses under his control, Rockefeller created a new legal structure called a trust. And in this arrangement, a small group of trustees legally owned and operated businesses on behalf of investors. In 1882, the 37 stockholders of Standard Oil transferred their stock to 9 trustees, granting them control over all company operations. This arrangement immediately drew state and federal legal challenges, as monopolies implied exclusive ownership of an entire industry, which violated existing statutes. When the Ohio Supreme Court ruled that Standard Oil must dissolve due to its legal monopoly over refining, Rockefeller responded by reorganizing the company under a holding company model. A holding company was a central corporation that controlled multiple businesses by owning a majority of stock in each business. And while technically not a trust and therefore harder to prosecute under existing anti-monopoly laws, holding companies function essentially the same as monopolies. Progressive reformers of the late 19th century viewed them as a symbol of the dangerous concentration of wealth and power in capitalist big business, a concern reflected in political cartoons of the era. Rockefeller did not give a crap. This guy did not care. He ignored reformers' criticism, and other businessmen quickly followed his example. By 1905, more than 300 business mergers had occurred in the United States, affecting over 80% of all industries. Sorry. Despite the passage of the Sherman Antitrust Act, in 1890, consolidation continued. By the early 20th century, just 1% of American businesses controlled over 40% of the national economy. Okay, let's talk about this last guy. Pierpont Morgan, or just J.P. Morgan. Okay, unlike Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller, J.P. Pierpont Morgan, was not a rags to riches figure. He was just born into wealth. Great. And he expanded it dramatically through investment banking, using financial expertise to support and profit from America's leading industrialists. So he's just privileged. Morgan was the son of a London banker, and in 1857 he moved to New York City to manage the family's American business interests. After arriving, he separated from the London bank and founded J. Pierpont Morgan & Co. and Company, whatever. J. Pierpont Morgan and Company, which was an investment firm that specialized in buying and selling stock in rapidly growing companies. Morgan's firm invested family and client wealth into business with the strong potential with strong potential earning enormous profits. Such investment capital was essential to the success of emerging industrial giants like Carnegie and Rockefeller. In exchange for financing, Morgan and other bankers demanded seats on corporate boards of directors, giving them direct influence over company policies and decisions beyond simple investment. This practice alarmed critics, especially members of a U.S. congressional subcommittee, who investigated the control financiers held over key industries. The subcommittee labeled Morgan's enterprise a money trust, arguing it was even more powerful than industrial trusts like Standard Oil. Morgan defended himself by claiming that his banking practices brought stability, order, and organization to an otherwise hyper-competitive capitalist economy, likening his role to a form of public service. Which, okay, whatever. Creation of US Steel. Let's talk about that. Morgan's most significant consolidation occurred in 1901 when he targeted the steel industry. He sought to buy out Andrew Carnegie, who was initially reluctant, and after persistent pressure, Carnegie set an inflated price of $500 million. Morgan accepted without hesitation. He did not care. He has money. Like, why not? And Morgan then merged Carnegie Steel Holdings with several smaller steel companies, creating the U.S. Steel Corporation, which was capitalized at $1.4 billion. This made U.S. Steel the first billion-dollar corporation in American history, symbolizing the unprecedented scale of industrial and financial power in the era. Morgan was praised by admirers for modernizing investment banking practices, increasing efficiency in industry, and his care for general welfare and support for the arts. However, reformers criticized him, later blaming Morgan and similar bankers for helping create an artificial bubble of prosperity that they believe contributed to the Great Depression of the 1930s. Morgan's influence was undeniable, and in 1912, a U.S. congressional committee reported that his firm held 341 directorships, not dictatorships, directorships, across 112 corporations, controlling over $22 billion in assets. That sum exceeded the assessed value of all land west of the Mississippi River, underscoring the extraordinary concentration of financial power in Morgan's hands. And that's all we have. Thank you so much. This one's really long. I'm so sorry. We talked about like 3 different guys.